Hey, this is Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you listen to The Scoop on OwlScoop.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop. This is Season 5, Episode 22. A new time slot? Well, not really. A new time slot. People are going to get this on a...
Doesn't matter to them.
Thursday, yeah.
Does not matter to them.
Matters to us, though.
A new voice with us.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Newman joining the OwlScoop.com Scoop podcast lineup. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm very well. It's nice to be here with you all.
Wearing your Adam Gase outfit.
Unfortunately, I resemble him.
Can you explain the White Sox hat that you wear a lot?
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm from Charlotte, right? Mm-hmm. And the Charlotte
from
Knights,
Jersey originally.
Yeah, and the Charlotte Knights are the White Sox AAA affiliate.
Ooh, but you're a Mets fan, as I cringe as I say it.
that is also correct.
Yuck.
Yeah,
Graham Foley with us today, Sam Cohn with us. I'm John DiCarlo. Those of you who read OwlScoop have read, I'm sure, a lot of Sam's work. Former Temple News reporter, Jets Wire, right?
Yeah.
So doing Jets coverage for
USA Today Sports Media Group. Yep.
So happy to have him in the lineup. Biggest news this week is that we are OwlScoop.com uncles now. Kyle Gauss. We've been telling you that Kyle's going to be out of the mix for a while. Kyle's a father on January 10th, which was, I believe was their original projected due date. Kyle and his wife Meg are now the parents of Jordan Kyle Gauss. He worked his middle name in there.
I found that so funny.
Middle name.
I wonder if he had to fight for that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or if she was just like, yep, let's do it.
It won't be Kyle Jr. I think Kyle Jr. would have been nice because they didn't call him KJ. KJ Gauss.
Do you like that name?
KJ Gauss sounds like a football player.
That's true. Middle linebacker.
All pro middle linebacker. KJ Gauss.
4-star recruit. J.K. Gauss.
Yeah.
Like J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You can't mix it around.
Kyle's eating this up.
Dan Baker, the Phillies PA announcer, whenever there's a two initial name, emphasizes each one. It's beautiful. Yeah. KJ Gauss would have been like a perfect name for Dan Baker.
Yeah. So I've talked to Kyle a couple of times. So he's happy, sleep deprived, but we're super stoked for him. So, you'll still see Kyle checking in with information on the message boards and stuff like that. But, he's going to be away for a while, being a father. So we're super stoked for him, happy for him. And, Kyle, if you need parenting advice, just come to us. None of us are
We'll do our best.
So, So as much as I get asked about it, I'm not a father yet. So, but we're super happy for him. Got some mailbag questions for you today. Later in the podcast, you will hear from Sam and Graham following Temple's basketball game against number 16 Wichita State. Tough task there for Temple. A lot of good shooters. A Wichita State team that has lost just once this season. And got some transfer news. Not so surprising. Todd Centeio entered the transfer portal. We're recording this on a Wednesday. He entered the transfer portal yesterday. So the third player to transfer, Kenny Yeboah, is transferred down to Baylor. Quincy Roche announced that he's entering the transfer portal as a grad transfer. Possible destinations for Quincy Roche could include maybe Texas Tech. He recently visited Miami. Todd Ricon of NJ.com reported that Quincy Roche might have interest in taking a visit to Rutgers. That is not true. I can tell you that that's not true. He's not going to end up at Rutgers. Yes, these things are fluid. Things could change, but don't see that happening. But talk a little about the Centeio news. I guess this doesn't surprise anybody here, right?
Not at all. And I feel like, this isn't, seeing Kenny Yeboah go, seeing Quincy Roche go might be tough for the fans. I don't think you're losing a lot by losing Todd Centeio. I think his packages could sometimes work, but I don't think he's added much to the offense last season, and I don't think it's that big of a deal.
I don't know that you could say... I get what you're saying. I think there would have been a quarterback competition in the spring.
Sure.
I wouldn't downplay what he contributed this year. Through a few touchdown passes, and definitely, I think, held Russo accountable. There were a couple of times where Centeio would go out after leading a scoring drive, whether it was a touchdown or a field goal, and you'd see Anthony Russo respond. But I hear you. I still think he would have been facing an upward battle in terms of trying to win the starting quarterback job here. But I'm mildly surprised that they didn't announce sooner. But I'm sure he wanted to think things through.
Yeah, that's
eventually
fair.
that logjam had to
sure
clear out because you had Kanique Bonner-Stewart, you also have Chad Beatty, and then you have Matt Duncan coming in.
Yeah.
So there's, not everybody's going to be able to play, and obviously you're probably going to go into next season with Russo as your starter, and Toddy would have to prove that he'd win the job. But also, I feel like this season, Toddy, like the packages work sometimes, and other times it was a little predictable, like you knew what he was going to do with the ball.
Yeah.
And then other times when you asked him to be a pocket passer, he would stand in there too long and take way too many sacks.
Yeah.
So you came and go with the positives and negatives, but I don't think any of us are really surprised to see him leave.
And I think he'll still be held accountable, Russo, just by having a couple guys behind him who can still definitely compete for this quarterbacking job. So I wouldn't be worried about that as well.
Either way, it's Russo's job to lose, and Toddy wants. I think he knows he can play, and he knows he can start, knows he wants to start, and he's just not going to get that here. He's gonna. Going into next season, he's not going to be able to take over the starting job. He's going to find himself in, as Sam mentioned, predictable packages. He's going to make some plays, but at the end of the day, he wants to make a name for himself. He wants to be a starting quarterback somewhere else.
Yeah, and again, this happens. I think it'll clear the way. Now Trad Betty really has an opportunity to step up to be the backup. I wouldn't be totally shocked after the spring ball to see how spring ball goes. You could see them add a transfer, maybe a grad transfer for depth or something like that. But now I think next guy up might be Trad Betty. We'll see what happens with Kanique Bonner-Stewart. I don't hear his name mentioned a ton. I do think he has a long way to go. But again, football is a very, evolving, college football especially, evolving sport where guys come in and they don't flash right away. But I think Trad Betty might be the guy that's going to end up as the backup. But again, we'll see what the spring brings for them.
I feel like a grad transfer would make sense just because they're going to redshirt Matt Duncan this year, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, without a doubt. And then, like you said, KBS doesn't seem to be ready. So,
yeah, I think we talked about this on previous podcasts. I think ultimately Rod and the staff would like to redshirt a lot of these guys, especially the offensive and defensive linemen. He's talked about maybe Nick Baggs, the defensive tackle from Staten Island, maybe getting into the mix. Wouldn't be totally surprised to see a guy like Trey Blair from Haverford High School maybe get into the mix at safety, maybe in the return game. You're losing Isaiah Wright, although Isaiah Wright didn't do anything in the return game for you this year. But now, all of a sudden, he's making double moves on people down at the Shrine Bowl and seems to be flashing some of the potential he had before. And
funny how that works.
Yeah. All right, so we mentioned at the outset of the show that Temple had its hands full this week playing number 16 Wichita State. So Graham and the Sams here are going to recap Temple's game against Wichita State.
And welcome to the Leah Center following Temple's 65-53 win over Wichita State. It's late. It's 12:30 at night. This is Graham Foley along with the Sams, Sam Cone and Sam Newman. We're tired, but what a win that was for Temple. Much needed, ending a 3-game losing skid all in conference with a win over number 16 ranked Wichita State, a team that hadn't lost a conference game, hadn't lost a road game yet. And they really kind of took over early in the second half, held Wichita State without scoring for the first 6 minutes and 18 seconds of the second half, took the lead, didn't give it up for the rest of the time. It wasn't a very pretty game at all for Temple, 20 turnovers, and they still found a way to win this game. Sam and Sam, what'd you guys think?
I mean, it usually isn't pretty for them when they get the job done, but, we said they had 20 turnovers. Jake Forrester got in foul trouble. He had 11 points and 2 blocks, nothing else. Played 14 minutes. Surprisingly, the only 2 times that he played less minutes was this Tulsa blowout in Maryland when he made his debut. Rashma Parks came in and stepped up. Monty Scott came in and stepped up. Also, talking about Monty Scott, we got to give credit to what credit's due. John called it. John said that
John DiCarlo on the podcast. You'll hear it.
Yep, you'll hear it. He said that Monty Scott would have a breakout game. He did. Aaron McKie was very happy with what he did. And then Quentin Rose was your table setter. He got the job done when it needed to be, and it's something Temple's missed. They had it in Shiz. And finally, I guess, halfway through the season, you're seeing it from Quentin, and this was a big win from a team that needed to make a statement after losing 3 straight conference games, dropping 2 at home, and they put a fork in it. And I mean, anytime you get to storm the court at home, that's pretty good.
It was a pretty lackluster court storm, but they did do it. And jumping on with Quentin real fast, too, he and Monty Scott both took a lot of free throws down the stretch and really hit them well. That's something that the team has struggled with a lot, and that was really important.
Absolutely a must-win. As you guys mentioned before, they're coming off 3 straight losses, Tulsa, Houston, Tulane. 2 of those came at home. Up next, they're going to face SMU, UPenn, and Cincinnati. Those are all really tough teams. I think just one of those is on the road. The other 2 are at home.
2 of them are on the road.
Excuse me, 2 of them are on the road, 1 at home.
It's late.
It's late.
The biggest thing I figured coming into this game is there's no way Temple wins if they don't come out firing on all cylinders and they don't match the energy that Wichita State is going to bring. A problem with Temple's as of late through this tough stretch is they're starting games slow and they have to crawl their way back. UCF was the only one where they went down big and then they crawled their way back and were able to make that push. They were able to finish strong and win that game. Did not help that Jake Forrester got into foul trouble early. He sat for a good majority of the first half, was able to get more production in the second half. But you think about it, if you don't look at the foul totals, you're thinking, why Jake Forrester on the bench? He scored 6 straight points for the Owls to start the game. He provided a huge spark. He had a perfect night from the field, 4 for 4 inside. Aaron McKie mentioned post-game he thinks Forrester might be the best offensive player on the team or when it comes to finishing around the rim. So he was a huge factor. But you guys mentioned Quentin Rose and Monty Scott. Monty Scott was unbelievable in the second half in terms of just bringing some life to this team. He was able to knock down shots when it mattered, something he's largely struggled with for so much of this year. We've talked about it a handful of times. He's getting good looks. He's taking good shots. He just can't put the ball on the hoop. And tonight, what was it, 11 points, 5 rebounds? Like, he looked pretty solid. He was able to hit shots when it mattered and able to provide some spark when the rest of the guys weren't really making things happen offensively.
Sam, kind of to go off what you said, they matched Wichita State's intensity. And, offensively, it kind of came with the way they played defensively. They shut out Eric Stevenson, which was, it wasn't surprising to me because of the way they played defense, but that's their top scorer. So if Temple can play defense like they do, it's their offense. If you want to compare it, it's kind of like how their football team is. When their defense shuts down the offense, they're able to score. That's what they did tonight. And if they're going to go on a stretch and beat these teams, like we know that they can, it's a matter of Aaron McKie says getting the ball in the hole, it's going to have to come through the defense.
I think we actually talked about that concept earlier in the pod of Temple's defense needs to play well if they're going to win games. They can't rely too heavily on their offense to make things happen in half-court sets for 40 minutes.
And that's something, too, that they have succeeded with all season, especially with Nate Pierre-Louis, finding the top scorer and just shutting them down, making other guys beat them, and that's something that has been really consistent all season. And Temple didn't shoot the lights out in this game by any set, but they did improve. The shooting was really the biggest issue in the last 3 losses. I think they shot, 46% from the field today. It's an improvement, and they also won the rebounding battle, something else that they got killed against Houston in that just needed to improve, and they were able to do it. But what really won the game, like you said, was defense, and they really used a full-court press for much of the entire game. That's something that UConn did very, very well against Wichita State, and their close loss that took 2 overtimes. It was something that I'm sure Temple saw and knew was a blueprint, and it was something that they've already been able to do all season. And so we asked Aaron McKie about it on Tuesday, and he said it's just about communication. They'll be able to do that, and they were really able to execute that perfectly tonight.
Notable note, 2 of Wichita State's primary scorers, Tyson Etienne and Eric Stevenson, both held to 0 points on a combined 0 for 15 shooting. That really speaks volumes to Temple's defense.
That's massive. And again, they're not the best shooting team, and that could hurt them down the stretch. We were saying today we don't think they're a tournament team. This win maybe gives them a chance to keep going with that. But this defense can win games, and these are the type of games that they're going to win.
It's a quad 1 win,
It is a quadrant 1 win. It absolutely is.
To go off your point about Nate Pierre-Louis, he had probably the best game that he's had in a long time, and he turned over the ball 6 times. So there's something, you got to take the good with the bad, but at the end of the day, if he plays like that he does on defense, you got to take with the mistakes that come on offense. But he was making some jumpers. He was getting to the basket. He wasn't finishing. He was getting to the basket, though. So you have to take the good with the bad, and just, at this point, like we were talking about earlier, and you'll hear later on the podcast, is that this team is in transition mode. I know Temple fans might not like to hear that, but at the end of the day, it's about these kind of steps and making it as a team. And overall, this was a team win tonight. And you saw Aaron McKie fired up. Like, this is a great win for them, and it's a great, and hopefully this is a great win for the direction of the program as they want to build off of.
One last point before we kind of wrap up here is Damian Moore getting 8 minutes. He hasn't played that much. He hasn't played at all since Houston. He hasn't scored at all since UCF. He was able to get a couple minutes. He didn't really show much production, but he was a guy we've talked about a handful of times as being someone you can kind of write off as a bench player for the rest of the year and not going to get any minutes. And we really wrote him off. What did you guys see?
No, we did, exactly. And that was, another situation, like we said, Forrester had the foul trouble, and he was really the third guy up after Rashma Parks, who played a decent game.
No Justin Hamilton.
But no Justin Hamilton once again.
DNP for him.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means for him. I know they like him, but we'll see.
Yeah, and that was definitely pretty telling that they were having trouble with Forster. They needed more production, and Damian Moore was the next guy to go to after Rashma Park. So something definitely to watch going forward. Well, it's 1:15 a.m. here at the Lee Corps Center. We are very tired. We're not as tired as apparently John DeCarlo was, who did not make the trip for the 9 p.m. game. He's back at home in the burbs, or as Kyle Gauss, who's dealing with a 5-day-old son. So we'll get to bed, but they're probably already asleep. That's it for today, and we'll head to the mailbag now.
All right, so now we'll answer some questions from the mailbag. Again, a little bit of a disclaimer here. We are recording the mailbag portion of our podcast before the basketball game, so anything basketball related is not going to include our perspective on Wednesday night's game against Wichita State, but still some good stuff here from the message boards. First mailbag question comes from dblaze75 from our message board. A couple of questions. With the recent news of Toddy, do you see a couple more Owls in the current roster entering the transfer portal? If so, does that include Ramon Davis? So that's the thing that a lot of fans have been talking about. Ray Davis caused a bit of a stir last week, right? When he put a tweet out there, it said big news coming, and he happened to be sitting at the basketball game.
Yeah, it was the same night as the Houston game, right?
Yeah, same night as the Houston game. I've been told by a few people now that he's 100% in, doesn't plan to transfer. I've also covered college sports long enough to know that these things are fluid, but as of now, he plans to be with the team, through spring camp. Honestly, has a really good freshman season to build upon. I think just having covered this stuff long enough, I will say that any player needs to be careful with any coaching staff of being in, out, in and out, in and out, because if you do that, any coach who's worth his weight at some point is going to be saying, all right, if I let this guy get away with something, no matter how good he is, I need guys who truly want to be here. Will that sell to the Temple fan base? No, probably not, but we didn't know at this juncture last year that Ray Davis was going to be good, and then he turned out to be good. So we'll see. I mean, we'll monitor this. Again, as of now, he says he's in, but he's going to have competition from Onassis Neely, who's getting healthy now, from Tavon Rui, from Edward Sadie. We'll see. But as of now, I get that. I mean, a lot of fans were asking about it. You put out a tweet like that, it's going to generate some attention. But as of now, he's still with the program. Again, well, it's something to keep an eye on. But again, I think if it becomes a situation where he's waffling back and forth, I think eventually any coach is going to be like, you're either in or you're out. I can't have this. But
and also beyond that, I mean, even if without Ray, like you take him out of the picture just for a second, they have a lot of guys in this current class who played running back well in high school. And Rod said they could look that they're locked in at the current position they're in right now, but they could look to try them out elsewhere, because I know Alex Odom and Mahim McCargill both played running back pretty effectively in high school. Yeah,
and again, I mean, and this is pure speculation. Again, like Trey Blair is really talented too. It was a really good quarterback, really good runner. And again, we'll see what happens next month in February. We've been asked a couple of times in the mailbag, how many scholarships do they have left? There's going to be natural roster attrition. They could add a player or two next month, depending on how the numbers even out. If they happen to add a back, we'll know that, maybe they're trying to add more competition there. Maybe they're bracing for something. Of course, they could also look to add a defensive end with Quincy Roche leaving. They could look to add a quarterback, although I think, as you mentioned earlier, I think they might look for quarterback depth, maybe the grad transfer route, something along those lines. Number 2 basketball question from dblaze75. Teams are mixing their defense much more these days by altering. I guess you meant to say alternating between man-to-man and zone. And Temple is not the only team struggling against the zone. The best D in hoops, Virginia's pack line D, has very similar concepts to a matchup zone. I'm by no means suggesting Temple go back to zone, as it will never happen, but do you think McKie will mix in more zone with his man-to-man D? He rarely does it. Haven't looked at the three-point percentage of teams this year, but will moving back the three-point line cause teams to alter their D? Well, a lot of questions there. First thing is, D-Blaze, appreciate the question, but I think you've missed that Aaron, especially the last couple games, has played a lot of zone. They have mixed in a lot of zone.
They play a lot of zone, especially on press coverage. When they press the floor, they're playing either a 1-2-2 zone trap, or falling back into either a man or I think they've even fallen back into a 2-3 or kind of a matchup zone.
Definitely into a 2-3 and then
There,
kind of
but
mixing in some
It's
looks.
they almost never run a zone just in the half court defensive set. It's more so to play a full court press trap and then fall back into a zone because it's tough to match up off of that.
Yeah, so they already are doing that. And I get D-Blay75's point here. No, I mean, and Aaron said this before, they're never going to be, I guess you never say never, but they're never fully going to be committed to the matchup zone like John Chaney used to play it, because to do that, and Jim Boeheim would say the same thing, Tony Bennett would say the same thing, not to do it, you have to recruit to it.
I wouldn't
Like-
with this team. I wouldn't even touch a zone.
No, I
Like
mean, again, I don't...
a straight up 2-3 zone and a half court set. I wouldn't even touch it with the guys there. With the length and the athleticism potential they have defensively, defense is their brand. That's who they are.
Now, I
Yeah.
will say the other day, we were me and my roommate Addison were looking at some of these stats. Temple was, now they're 25 after the Tulane game, but 16th in the country in opponents' three-point percentage,
Right.
and that Tulane game knocked them back. They were at similar numbers as Virginia, the holding teams to a bad three-point percentage, and they get among the American the most number of 3-point shots taken against them.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they're forcing guys to take the shots that they want, and it's very similar to that packed line defense. Even if they're not playing that kind of style, the results are getting there. So that kind of zone mix up, forcing teams to take threes, especially with the 3-point shot being pushed back. It's something that seems like it is happening in some ways. With
They
this
do
team.
they do rotate really well defensively. They do talk a lot defensively. JP Mormon's one guy who I mentioned to Graham is a really underrated off-ball defender. The way he can sit back in the paint and see the floor out in front of him and talk guys through screens. They switch on just about everything, or they'll hedge really well and drop back. Like that's one thing that I think is a little underrated with this team, or maybe not even talked about enough, is the way they play the perimeter defense, and especially defending against the screen and roll. They hedge on-ball screens really well and then drop back and defend and talk through those really well.
Yeah. But again, and I get that question. Again, like, if D-Blaze is asking if they're ever going to be like fully committed to it, no. Again, like, at least now, because again, like, I mean, Chaney had to recruit to it. Boeheim's recruited to it. When Chaney would play like a 1-3-1, I mean, he would tell kids, like, you're going to be my guy that's going to roam the back line and on the 1-3-1 on the baseline. And that takes, like, that is exhausting.
That's a lot of
That's
athleticism.
exhausting.
Yep.
And you have to say, like, yeah, you may be 6'10", 6'11", you may not be great with your back to the basket, but you're going to defend first and your offense is going to come after that. And again, there are some guys on this team that can play some zone, but then you see a really long and athletic team like Houston, and you see real length and athleticism. You look at Temple, you got Alani Moore. JP is, as you said, is a very underrated defender. Would I call him a long, lean, super athletic, like zone defender? No. So you can't just completely blow it up. But again, he has been doing a lot more. He did it against Tulane. He did it against Houston. I think it slowed up Houston a little bit. Now, obviously, they started running a little bit better offense. Obviously, like that game, the Houston game could have gotten really ugly. They fell behind by 15. I thought they were cooked at that point, especially with what Houston was doing on the offensive glass. But I would say that just mixing up things defensively, I think Aaron's done that a little bit more than Fran Dunphy has. And I think at least when you at least go zone and teams come down, they bring the ball down, they look and they pause and they stop, it just causes even the slightest pause in them running their offense. So they have been doing it a lot more. I think Aaron will probably trust his instincts there to see if it's working or not, but I don't know if they're going to completely become a zone team. Next set of questions comes from Park Al from the message board. With Alani Moore and Napier Louis coming down from their hot starts, JPL's minutes have started to rise. If he continues improving, could we see him consistently getting 30 minutes per game by the end of the season? He seems to be the most complete guard on the roster.
Yeah, and we discussed that earlier. It seems like
This is John's favorite question.
right. Yeah, and John asked this of Aaron McKie yesterday, and basically said that he wants to control him a little bit. He has been doing really well. He wants to put him out there, but he's just trying to hold him back. Not hold him back, but trying to control him a little bit with just how many minutes he's getting per game. You could see him get more. I don't think we'll ever see 30 minutes a game this season with him, but it does seem like he's going to get more as the season goes on.
It's not easy to get 30-plus minutes of true freshman.
Right.
Let's I'll actually play that clip for you again. This is from Aaron McKie talking to Graham and I on a Tuesday. So again, this is pre-Wichita State. As Graham said, I did ask Aaron about Josh Pierre-Louis and his minutes, and here's the clip that Graham was referring to.
I want to, but with young guys, you run the risk of them losing their confidence. So it's a day-to-day thing, and I to constantly grab them and teach them, and every day in practice or even in the game is teachable moments for him. He wants to be great. He wants to be great overnight. And I told him it's a process to get to that point. He has to learn how to run a team and just come out with that focus. I want to run my team. I want to defend at a high level and start with that. And I think for him, everything else will just fall in place for him.
So there again, that's Aaron talking about Josh Pierre-Louis and his minutes and his production prior to the Wichita State game when they had media availability on Tuesday.
Well, I think we got a glimpse of what Josh Pierre-Louis can do when he has more minutes when he played versus USC, and they wouldn't have gone and gotten one of their best wins of the season without him. Like, he's a true freshman. You have to kind of balance out how he plays, but I think at the same time, you have to start giving him more minutes just because the team is not winning with the current players they have on the floor. Alani Moore, it's seen an exceeding role, and like we talked about earlier, Sam, we said they haven't gotten the same Alani Moore that played in the first 4 or 5 games. The increase in the fluctuation of minutes, he's kind of not that player. Last year, he was a role player who came off the bench and could get you a 3 when you needed it. This year, he's kind of forcing up shots, and, I mean, there's Tulane. He played 24, 25 minutes, and he didn't score a single point. So at the end of the day, I think Josh is going to force their hand to play more, especially when you have somebody like Damian Dunn who are unsure of whether he's going to play again this season.
You look at the last 2-ish weeks, 6-ish games, whatever you want to call it, the narrative is growing that Josh Pierre-Louis maybe should take over the starting role. We talked about in the beginning of the season how long would it take until Josh's minutes go up and Alani's minutes go down. And Alani Moore had a really great start to the season. And I will absolutely stand by my point that the best you will get out of Alani Moore is who you want as your starting point guard. But Alani Moore has not shown that since the first 5 or 6 games. He played really well against Maryland. He played pretty well against Texas A&M. Davidson was kind of that fall-off game. Davidson, Mizzou, both really bad games for him. And since then, we haven't gotten the Alani Moore that you want to see as a floor general, a guy that's good for a 3 in the opening minutes to kind of light that spark, a guy that can feed guys like Quentin Rose, Nate Pierre-Louis on the wing, feed the ball inside, a good enough passer, can hit a couple from outside, go at least around 40%, close to 500 from 3. That's the Alani Moore you want because senior, confident point guards are going to win you basketball games in college basketball, but that's just not it's just so frustrating. That's not the Alani Moore we've seen.
I also think Aaron needs to put Alani in situations to succeed because I remember John and I, we covered the Missouri game and Josh Pierre-Louis was out with an injury, I'm pretty sure, and he left Alani out there kind of dry. There's, I think they're not the Smith twins, they're not related, but they're both those guards who are a lot taller than Alani, and he was not doing so well against them. And granted, you don't have Josh Pierre-Louis, so you don't have that option, but Monty Scott is still a bigger body, and whether I don't know how much better you could say defensively is than Alani Moore, but that size is still a discrepancy there.
The other thing I'll add is that you kind of have to put Alani Moore in an uncomfortable position. Not to say that he should be left out on an island like that, like they should limit his minutes. But Aaron McKie said in one of the first media availabilities, he wants these guys to feel like their positions as a starter or their positions in the rotation, whatever their minutes, are not guaranteed. They have to earn them week in and week out. And if you have to do that with Alani Moore to show him, because his confidence hasn't been there the last 2 weeks, if that's what it takes to get him to really find his spark again, to really get back to that level, then absolutely give Josh Pierre-Louis more minutes.
Yeah, and I like that approach. I'd put this out on Twitter. Of course, you were at the game for us on Saturday in the Tulane loss, and I put this out on Twitter that day. As Temple got off to a 5-1 start with Alani in the lineup, he averaged 12.5 points a game, shot 39.5% from 3, and 41.5% overall. And then in the 8 games since December 1st, Alani's averaged 7.4 points per game, and will have dipped. I hadn't included the Tulane game in that. Shot 35.7% overall and 38.6% from 3. So not a steep drop off from 3, but then on Saturday he goes 0 for 4, all from 3-point range. And, you're looking at that, as we've said, it's trending in that direction. Like, well, if he's not giving you shooting and he's not, an absolute, maven on defense, then you might. And again, Josh did get more minutes. This is going to be Aaron's first real test of, like, how he handles a freshman guard because he came up in an era where John Chaney on one hand would say, keep shooting. You're going to have to work through your mistakes, but if you're turning the ball over, I'm taking you off the floor because, yes, I'm trying to groom you, but we're also still trying to win basketball games. So Aaron, and he talked about this the other day too, their season's not completely shot. Are they probably NIT bound at this point unless they beat Villanova, unless they go on a huge run in the conference tournament? Yeah, probably. But he's still in a position where he's got to win games, but he also knows, Josh, other than Quentin Rose, Josh Pierre-Louis is the one guard on the team that can absolutely change the temperature of the floor by driving and dishing or finishing. His brother, Nate, at one point was finishing well around the rim. Right now, he's not really doing that. Quentin Rose can get to the rim. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes you get an NBA move and you're like, wow, I can understand why NBA teams are really involved and like him a lot. And then sometimes he'll dribble the ball off his foot. And I'm not saying that to take a shot at Q. It's just how it's been. But I do think that you're going to see Josh's minutes go up. But again, if he commits turnovers, and as you've heard there in that clip, he's going to have to manage that as well.
Another thing that if we talk about, because I know I mentioned I thought the team might be more talented this year than we were last year, but if you think about it, Dre Perry has kind of taken over that role that Alani had last year, where you need a shooter who came off the bench.
Yeah.
But Alani's taken the role for Shiz. Alani can't replace the production that Shiz could give you on defense or on offense.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they're missing. And I think all along, even though Shiz wasn't a true traditional point guard, he still could get you baskets when you needed it, and they don't have that.
Well, they would have. I'm sure they would have loved to have. I mean, any coach can say this. They probably would have loved to have had one more year of Shiz Alston. Sam and I have talked about this, and we mentioned it earlier. No, like, the ball's not sticking to one side of the floor anymore. Sam's mentioned this a bunch of times. Aaron's mentioned it. But in the past few seasons, it did stick to the one end of the floor, and it was like dribble handoff. Let's see what Shiz can do. Shiz he's a fringe pro. He's in the G League right now. I'd love to see him get a shot in the league, but a lot of times he was double teamed and even sometimes triple teamed, but he could hit like a fadeaway three or something like that. Now they'll pop the ball around. That's a great point. Like, Dre is starting to take on that role. JP Mormon's not really hitting at the clip you'd like him to. He put a shot off the side of the backboard against Tulane, so they are moving the ball around, but now they don't have a consistent knockdown shooter that they really need.
Just to that point of ball movement, when you look at Josh Pierre-Louis and Alani Moore as floor generals, first option ball handlers, however you look at it, a lot of their offense is swing the ball, have a guy drive, and kick it to a corner or kick it back out to the wing. And Josh's size gives him the advantage there, because Alani Moore will go baseline. He'll have the two big men collapse in on him, and then he's screwed. There's nowhere he can go with the ball because he's got guys that are 6'6" around him, and Alani just can't pass around them. Whereas Josh is able to rise up above them on, he goes for a layup and then he dishes it out while he's in the air. One more thing I want to say about the difference between the two of them is, although I like a lot better, like good Alani Moore, I like better than Josh. Defensively, Josh Pierre-Louis is a couple hand checks. Stopping a couple, controlling his hand checks away from being like a solid defender, whereas Alani Moore sometimes can be a liability.
Not to get too off track here from the original question and the original point, but if you look at their offense, is there anybody who is confident in themselves to be taking shots in Quentin Rose? Like, I know Quentin is not making them with consistency you like, but when you look at them on the floor, you have Nate passing up shots that he should probably be taking.
Alani Moore took 10 a couple games ago.
Yeah.
10 threes. He went 5 for 10. Good. If Alani Moore plays like that, he's your starting point guard.
That's exactly
Josh
the point.
is shooting more confident.
He's not doing that consistently. Yeah. They don't have guys who are
now he's going
0 for shots.
Now he's going 0 for 7, 0 for 8, 1 for 6. Those are not the numbers you need from your starting point guard. If Josh is going to knock him down, Josh is your guy. But in college basketball and in basketball as a whole, guys need to put an orange ball through an orange circle. And Alani Moore can't do it, and Josh is doing it.
Go peach basket on me. Give me a James Naismith peach basket reference. Well, Josh Pierre-Louis is actually shooting the ball at a better clip than people expected. He went from. I talked to him over the summer for our podcast, and he's got a personality just like his brother. He's like, at one point I couldn't even dunk, and then I'd have like these rim grazers, and then I worked with my dad. His dad played at Wagner, played professionally, and he would just literally like throw me around. I got to be a better finisher. But the rub on Josh was like super athletic, great defender, great finisher, super athletic. But his jump shot, not that he had terrible form, it just wasn't great. Well, again, this is pre-Wichita State. He's 11 of 31 from 3, which isn't, no one's going to call him, like the best three-point shooter in the country, but he's hitting at a 35% clip, which isn't terrible. And he's been a little bit of a better shooter, especially from 3 than we thought. So, again, like getting back to the original question, I'd be surprised if his minutes don't start to go up. And again, it's going to be on Aaron to manage all of these things. And I do like the way he does it. Like, like he'll say like, yeah, maybe one guy didn't play tonight, but that's not the way it's going to be down the line. That includes Justin Hamilton. I asked him about Justin Hamilton the other night, and he's like, I like him, but I still want to give us the guys who are giving the maximum effort. So I do think Aaron wants to wrap his arms around these guys, but he also does have this "what have you done for me lately" kind of mentality to keep these guys on their toes.
I want to say one more thing before we move on and go to the next question. So Wichita State, SMU, Cincy, and then Penn. That's a tough stretch before UConn.
Yep.
By the Penn game, quick roundtable. Who do you want to start by the Penn? Who do you want as your starting point guard by the Penn game? Assuming nothing changes or given some alternate universe. Graham?
Well, I'm not going to assume nothing changes. I think you still want Alani Moore as your starting point guard. I just want him to shoot more threes and to have the confidence that he had at the beginning of the season, because he can make these shots. It's not, it's not a question of ability anymore. He's shown he can do it. You just got to see it more consistently. I want more Josh Pierre-Louis minutes. I still think Alani's the right guy to start.
As Fran Dunphy and Aaron McKie would say, I had a moment there.
I know where this is going.
As they would say, it's not about who's on the floor
Yeah.
to begin the game; it's who's at the end. So if Josh is at the floor at the end of the game,
Like he was against Tulane.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's
Yeah. I'd start, and again, I am not trying to just ruin Alani Moore here, because again, they have still, even if he did not play the rest of the season, they've gotten more out of him than I thought they would. They've gotten a lot out of Arashma Parks. They've gotten a lot out of a lot of guys. At some point, I would hand the reins over to Josh, and I don't think that's a way of like folding the season. You're not handing this isn't football. You have a guy who can make a difference here, and even just going to a few practices, you can see certain plays that Josh makes where you're like, wow. And again, even like some of the stuff he did against USC and some other games, he's a very confident finisher, and they need that. They really, really need that, because again, they're gonna have some games where they hit some threes, where Dre hits some threes, or maybe JP hits a three, or Quentin Rose hits a three, but they're not going to do it consistently enough. If the past is our indication here, I'd give him a start eventually. I know we're not talking about this here. You and I have kind of debated this back and forth. Again, I love JP Mormon. He's a terrific kid. I think at some point, do you consider starting Dre to give you some offense? We've talked about how good of a defender JP has been. And again, JP's shooting form is not broken. He doesn't have a terrible shot. Sometimes he seems a little bit lost. Sometimes they'll look at him as like a zone breaker where they'll throw that entry pass to the top of the key, and sometimes they'll hesitate, like, do I turn and dish here, or do
always
I shoot?
turn and face. If you're in the middle against 2-3, you always
and he'll turn and face, and sometimes he'll hesitate a little bit. And again, we've never known JP Mormon to be, again, like this driving to the rim type of guy. He can do it, but I might keep an eye on that to see if they move JP to the bench. If they did it, I'm sure everybody's competitive and JP wants to start, but he's also a really smart guy and a team-oriented guy. And if Aaron went to him and said, "Hey, I'm gonna give Dre a start to give us a different look and bring us off the bench," I don't think you worry about JP like pouting and becoming an issue like team chemistry wise. I don't know how you feel about that.
A lot of things to play with there, but back to the original question, I'm going to agree with Graham that I think I'm going to keep Alani Moore as your starting point guard, but I'm going to decrease his minutes, and I'm going to make him a little bit uncomfortable in his role. I'm not going to make him feel too comfortable. I want him to shoot the ball more. Or, I mean, he's shooting... I hesitate to say shoot the ball more because he's had games where he's taken 7 threes.
Consistently?
Yeah, start knocking him down, get a little more consistent, get his confidence back, and when he starts to play more confidently, that's when this team, I think, is going to really win basketball games.
Second question from Parka. How much better than Anthony Russo, does Trad Beatty or Kanique Bonner-Stewart have to be this offseason to become the star against Miami? I think the simple answer there is Trad Beatty would have to come in and really, really clearly beat out Anthony Russo. And again, like, I understand where the question's coming from. Yeah, it kind of went back and forth with one fan, I think either on even in the Temple Facebook football Facebook group, or maybe on our message board. Statistically, Anthony Russo was a better quarterback this year. Mm-hmm. I realized that he didn't have a game like he had against UCF last year, but and yes, you saw it in the bowl game. He still throws a costly pick. That wasn't even necessarily like an arm talent pick there. That was, he owned up to it. He's like, made a bad read. We made an adjustment at halftime. We thought that throw would be there. It wasn't. And then, again, he's definitely thrown some costly picks. I'd like to see what Anthony Russo does with the same offensive coordinator for a second year in a row. Trad Beatty's sample size of football is really, really small. Again, so he would have to have a lights out camp where he's really a dual threat guy, which he can be, but really throws the football well, establishes, like you're talking about, like establishing chemistry with Jaden Blue, Brandon Mack, these guys trusting him. And again, like, I mean, he seems to be a great kid and people in the program like him, but it would have to be a very decisive, great spring, great preseason camp. Kanique Bonner-Stewart, we mentioned this earlier. The indication I've gotten is that he's a long way off. So I understand, like, he had a nice high school career down in North Carolina. He'd have to have a dramatic turnaround again. He was redshirted this year. He'll be a redshirt freshman. I don't think Kanique Bonner-Stewart is anywhere near starting at this point.
Yeah, I think Russo would probably have to be hurt for Trad to be starting versus Miami, and that's not any like a slight against Trad. It's just that Russo has more chemistry with everybody, and at the end of the day, I feel like if you look at, you get in trouble as a Temple fan if you're looking at box scores, and rather than, there was a lot of games where Russo played well, but he did not get a lot of help, and there was a lot of plays where, you know, the offense was just not getting in a rhythm. Not a lot of plays, but a lot of games where the offense just wasn't getting in a rhythm.
Right.
Weren't doing what they could do, get the ball going on the ground, and they got annihilated, like UCF and SMU. Games like those.
Yeah, and in games like that, you just see the team speed is just, there's a difference. Second question here from Diamond and Broad. What happened to Justin Hamilton? Looked to be developing last year, and outside of Forrester's injury last game, he's been riding the bench for a while. I did ask Aaron about Justin Hamilton again during Tuesday's media availability, and here's what Aaron had to say about Justin Hamilton.
He's been fine. Again, it's one of those things. I want to play the guys that's going to give me maximum effort, and we need rebounding. You know what I mean? We need guys that's going to go in there and hit and rebound the ball. So, you know, everybody's available for us. You know, I want to try to play all the guys, but when you go out, you got to play with maximum effort. And you know, I still think he can be a big piece for us.
All right, so there's McKie talking about Justin Hamilton. Again, this is programming note, this is pre-Wichita State, but again, a great question. We've seen a lot of potential out of Justin Hamilton. I wonder at some point if they, you know, Nate Pierre-Louis mentioned this to us on Tuesday. Again, I'm sure fans don't want to hear it, but he said, I think we're still adjusting. And fans might say, Aaron's been on the staff for a while. What's he adjusting to? But again, I think it's completely different when you take over as the head coach. I'd love to see for their sake at a point where, you know, I mean, they've talked about wanting to develop Jake Forrester's game where he can step out and hit shots. If Jake, in certain sets and certain possessions or certain stretches, is a guy that you can really throw the ball down to and he could pass out of a double team, and now Justin Hamilton's drawing a defender out because he's a 6'11 guy on the perimeter, he can hit a three, maybe that gets him going. Maybe that's what they're encouraging to do. But right now, as Aaron said, like they need guys that can rebound, and Justin's, he's a little kind of like lost in the sauce right now. I think he has a lot of potential, but he's lost in the sauce. Not like he's
great.
Not like
reference.
Lost in the stew, the soup.
Like
I really
10th grade,
like that.
11th grade. I say that all the time.
Yeah. That's what I'm here for, guys.
Anyway,
Yeah. Any thoughts on that or no? Any Justin Hamilton thoughts?
I will
Did
say
the
one
lost in
thing.
the sauce thing really throw you off?
I did not see that one coming. But I
Yeah.
will say,
Who
Justin
did?
Hamilton, I kind of shot myself in the foot on the first podcast this past semester saying I thought Justin Hamilton was going to be this breakout guy. He was going to be the most improved player on this team, and it just hasn't happened. But, I mean, shouldn't be overlooked. He had 2 solid games against UCF. He played 9 minutes and put up 8 points. And then it was the Tulane game. He had 20 minutes, put up 8 points and 4 rebounds. He had the same amount of points as Nate Pierre-Louis. So whether that's a matchup thing, whether that's just how he does in practice leading up to that week, whether that's Jay Forrester missing a game, whatever it is, Sam, you got something?
Yeah, I was telling John this. I feel like Temple, while they're trying to develop Hamilton, they're not putting him in exactly the position he needs to be. I feel like he's a 4 and they're trying to make him a 5, and that's just not who he is. He's not gonna out physical players for rebounds, and I don't feel like he's gonna get you down in the paint. Where you need him is where JP kind of is right now, because JP's your 4. So if they want to play big, maybe you could, like you said, have Jake out there.
Jake's a 5.
At the
Jake
5,
can play the 5.
and Justin at the 4, and maybe JP at the 3, Quentin at the 2, and somebody else at the 1. Try that. Play big.
That's a hot take.
I mean,
like it.
I totally agree with that. I could see that because he just doesn't have the physicality. You can see it all the time. And he talked about how in the offseason he added weight. It doesn't show that much. It seems like he's still having those same kind of physical struggles. But my thing is, I don't know what's going on in practice. I'm not in the coaching staff, but why? If he is struggling, him sitting on the bench isn't going to help at all. Like him not being in these games is not going to help him improve. And when you have such a quick leash on all these guys and you're using the entire bench, that's great. Throw him out there, see if he can get better, because I don't think he's going to get any better sitting on the bench.
But I think he has, though. I think he has thrown him out there. And I think Aaron has stayed true to that because, he's had a couple of DMPs this season, but then in the next game or maybe a couple games later, he's right back out there. I don't think he's disappeared for long stretches. One of the criticisms of Fran Dunphy was, and this is relating to Damian Moore. We haven't even talked about Damian Moore. There are times when Dame looks absolutely lost, but then Aaron will still throw him in there and say, if he can give us a couple rebounds, you'll get in there. Like one of the criticisms of Fran was a few seasons ago, Damian Moore goes for 20 and 10 against South Carolina up at Madison Square Garden. And he didn't play for a while, and then he got injured. So I do think that Justin's going to still continue to get his shot, and I think Aaron's going to be true to his word. I think he's been fairly true to his word on a lot of things in terms of how they want to play, how they're going to approach the game. And I do think he's really talented. When they brought him in, Fran talked a lot about, boy, he can really shoot it. He can really shoot it. And I think he can. There were some stretches last year where he would, drop step or like turn around, hit a fadeaway, maybe to soft 8 or 10 footer. You'd be like, okay, he's got a little bit of that in his game. I think he's just, this isn't anything super insightful to say. I think he's just really trying to figure out his role right now. Like, can I be confident enough playing with my back to the basket, or would I be more comfortable stepping out? I mean, we've seen that over and over and over again in college basketball, but I wouldn't completely rule him out. But again, I think Aaron was pretty honest with his assessment right there. All right, 2 more questions from Diamond and Broad. These are football related. Can you give some insight on Temple's strength and conditioning program specifically related to the offseason? Has the new strength staff improved these players? Roche made a comment about getting his body better. Is that a dig at the staff? No, I don't believe it is. I haven't heard anything alarming about Brad Ord or his staff. I think what Quincy was referring to more was like he just feels like he needs another year in college football and wants to get even bigger. And but I don't think that was a shot at Brad. I certainly don't think it was a shot against Jeff Knowles or Walter Stewart. I mean, Quincy Roche had his best year. And he was good last year. We saw this coming, but I mean, he had 13 sacks and was the American Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year with the help of Brad Ort, with the help of Jeff Knowles, with the help of Walter Stewart, and could probably have his pick of where he wants to go. A lot of high-powered programs are involved here at this point, but I think that's just him saying that he needs to, whether he stayed here or at Temple or whether he went somewhere else, I think he just wants to get bigger, stronger, and faster, just like everybody else. Number 2, what does the defensive line rotation look like next year? Seems a bit thin. Yeah, it's a great question. I think we've talked about this before. I think that some of the pressure is going to have to come from the interior.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like somebody might say, well, you're kind of dodging the question there, but I think you're going to have to get a lot from Ifan Maje. Some of the players, I can't remember off the top of my head who had said, don't overlook Dan Archibong. He occupied some blocks. You could be seeing more of him in the future. When I asked him, Quincy Roche, when I asked him, who's next in line to kind of replace you, he talked a lot about Arnold Ibikite, who he said has shown a lot of progress, a lot of flash. Again, one of those long, lean, athletic guys that they've recruited that they hope will get better, like Quincy Roche. So, he could be a guy. Do I expect Arnold to be a double-digit sack guy next year? No. Could they start bringing more pressure from linebackers and stuff like that? Again, I'm interested to see what Jeff Knowles does as a defensive coordinator in year 2, where he's had a year under his belt with these guys and might start unwrapping some more things on defense with some of these guys. I don't know how you guys feel about this one.
Well, another thing that you can't discount is you mentioned depth. You have Chris Banks really well.
Again, another interior
inside,
guy,
yeah.
but could help.
I mean, and I feel like if they wanted to, they could move Ifan around. I don't know if he would be okay on the defensive end, but they did that with Michael Dogby, and I mean, it can't hurt.
Yeah,
it really can't, especially with his inability to get after the passer this year.
Yeah. And again, you could be seeing some stuff out of some of the linebackers, guys that could be hybrid guys like Leighton Jordan. So we'll see. Again, that's why spring ball is going to be I mean, it's always interesting to cover every year, but a good question, and we'll see how that develops there. Next question from the message board. I believe this is the final one, unless anything has come in over the last few minutes or so. From C.H. Evans. This question is both basketball and football related. Years ago, Temple had a basketball player, James Spears, who became a serviceable defensive end on the football team. That was a while ago, more than 20 years ago. I believe that was Spears, what I think was a guy in the 80s? Late 80s, early 90s. I'd have to double check that.
Before any of us were born.
Thank you, Graham. Appreciate that. True, but the truth hurts. There are some great athletes on the basketball team, even if they can't shoot. Ooh, little dig. In your opinion, that is C.H. Evans' dig, not mine. That I'm reading from his question. In your opinion, what current Owl basketball players could you envision as football players, and what positions would they play? Have some fun with this. So let's have some fun with this.
Just thinking pure body type, the first one I could see would be J.P. Mormon. And he's got the height that I could see him being like a tight end, or maybe like
I was
even
gonna
like
say
a
Devondre.
linebacker.
Let Devondre play tight end.
Devondre, yeah.
What Jake Forrester, a tight end?
I think
Let them all play tight
Let them all
end.
play tight end. I think Devondre I could see as like a linebacker. Like he's just so thick,
True,
and that,
yeah.
but like athletic, and he could move around. That I feel like he could play that well.
Is this how Temple finally gets the tight end involved on their offense?
Sam bringing some heat. First pod. I like it.
Let Quentin Rose play slot receiver, or let him play out wide.
Napier Louis,
I think you play out wide. He's gonna have to like finesse some people.
He's got the height.
Yeah.
And Harold Carmichael going to the Hall of Fame today. When you have a guy that tall, he just jump over people. That's it. I also feel like Napier Louis is so athletic and so fast. I think he'd be a great corner or defensive back,
or running back,
safety, even running back as well. But I think he's got the speed to keep up with wide receivers. But I think he's got the athleticism to make plays.
He's a little loose with the ball sometimes, so I feel like corner would be his forte.
Yeah. Sam,
that all sounds amazing. Beyond those, I don't have any good ones.
Justin Hamilton, Damian Moore. It'd be hard to see them like.
They're too tall and too thin.
They're too tall and too thin. Unless you want to like get
Let
like these are my
Kashkijian play free safety.
Yeah.
Ooh, there you go.
Damian and Justin could be like just like let's try some red zone stuff with these guys. I'm literally gonna throw the ball up and see if you can pick it up out of the air.
Yeah.
I think I could see Josh Pierre-Louis as an outside receiver, slot receiver. I still think Nate would be like
Put Monty Scott at running back.
I see Monty as a safety. I see Monty
Monty
Scott.
Put him at quarterback.
Oh,
Let Monty throw the ball.
Yeah, I still think, and I know this is not part of this question, I still think that Monty Scott's best basketball is ahead of him. I still think he's a guy that can really rise up off the floor and hit some tough shots. And again, this sounds like extremely basic stuff. He's taken some really tough shots that literally just kind of gone in and out. I still think he's going to be due for a game at some point where he goes for 17, 19, 21 points. I still think he's a very good basketball player that just hasn't really kind of gone off yet. But I could see Monty like free safety. I think he's just
you were
got a
not
little
happy when I said I didn't like Monty Scott a couple weeks ago. You and Kyle were not happy. I didn't.
I remember that. Yeah, way back. Yeah.
I didn't like what Monty Scott was producing. I didn't think he brought enough to this team, and you and Kyle.
You guys,
whoa.
I just think again, it sounds general.
I agree with you though that his best basketball's in front of him because he does have a clean stroke.
Yes.
He can rise up. He takes good shots.
Yes.
He's can hit the corner three. He can stretch the floor, whatever. He's athletic. He can't put the ball through the hoop within 10 feet. He can't figure out how to get it in.
I don't think he's gotten the minutes to. Aaron has
You
been.
think it's minutes?
His minutes have kind of fluctuated.
His minutes have fluctuated too. It's hard. The inconsistency in minutes is kind of hard for some players to get in a flow.
That's fair.
I really think this is just becoming more of a transition season than people were ready for. And again, I get it. Like they started well. They almost beat Maryland on Thanksgiving. They were right there. I still think they're going to have several games this year where people are like, they get dragged back in and they're like, oh, they can be good. They can be good. Maybe they got a shot at upsetting Nova. Maybe they got a shot at upsetting Memphis. Or maybe they got a shot at making a run in the conference tournament. They have some pieces, but I really do think as Nate said, I really do think they're figuring things out, and I think Monty's one of those guys.
And I think where Temple fans get in trouble about the transition is it's a really lot harder the transition in basketball than it is football. And I know Rod Carey's transition wasn't like perfect, but they still went 8-4 and they went to a bowl game.
Right.
They're probably not going to go to the tournament this year. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be bumps in the road. But I think Temple fans have to understand is that this program know if you could say for the first time in a long time, but they're headed in the right direction.
They definitely had the talent, but they're a weird team. They got a lot to figure out, and it's going to take some time.
I've said before, they have some disparate pieces and parts. Again,
Yeah.
that and a lot of coaches will say that, like going back to football, like Phil Snow, Phil Snow, who is destined to be the next defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers with Matt Rule. Phil would always say he was pretty honest. He took over a defense, and Temple fans might remember Avery Williams, who's a really good linebacker at Temple. Played in the, where is Avery playing now? Is he in the XFL? No, where was it? No, CFL. I'm sorry. Avery Williams has turned into a pretty good player in the CFL. Very good college linebacker. And Phil Snow at some point said, love what he's brought to the program. He's been awesome. He's been a leader. Wouldn't recruit too many guys like him because of his height. And any coach who's taking over will go through some stuff like that. Like Aaron wants to recruit more long, lean, athletic guys that can be rangy and can shoot. So you're still adding some guys like that. You're still trying to get something out of guys. Like you said, they are kind of a weird team.
Which makes sense because that's a style that Aaron McKie wants to play. That's the new brand of basketball in this decade, is to play fast, to push the pace. But when Temple finds themselves getting caught in having to play half-court sets, they get in a little bit of trouble. When teams zone them up, they're not as consistent of a shooter as they all want to be. So they find themselves in trouble when other teams control the pace of the game. When Temple controls the pace of the game, they play incredibly well. I mentioned this to you the other night, when their defense is firing on all cylinders, like that's when they're playing really good basketball.
Sure,
because their defense is creating their offense, and they have some really good defenders. They're just not. They don't have what it takes to play 40 minutes of half-court sets.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be infrequent if they're going to win games.
Well, as far as I can tell, I think that's everything from the message board, unless I'm missing something, everything from Twitter. Really appreciate you guys chiming in on the mailbag. Big thank you to Sam Newman for joining us on the podcast this week. You'll be hearing him more often. And again, congratulations to Kyle Gauss and Meg Gauss, and welcome to the world, Jordan Kyle Gauss. And again, we are all Al Scoop uncles, and
We are all. I feel
take
like this
this
is an Al Scoop
responsibility
baby.
very seriously.
I think even our listeners
We make
really
up
have
T-shirts.
I was literally just going to say the
Ooh.
exact same thing. Let's get T-shirts.
I think Kyle is just cringing at that thought.
We'll come in
so
with the T-shirts for the next pod. I'll be ready.
what are these T-shirts going to say?
There's a picture of Jordan Kyle's face.
Ooh,
No,
yeah.
it's just
JK.
Owl Scoop, like a front shirt pocket. That
Uh-huh.
has Owl Scoop, and on the back it says Uncle.
Okay. Love that.
Oh, I like it. I
Love
like
that
it.
a lot.
I like it. Like it. So thanks for joining us this week, and we will talk to you guys next week.